Hey, Heidi ho, everybody. This is Postmortem Nightshade, one half of your wonderful ghastly ghost birds, and joining me tonight for our discussion is...
Solathro, how's it going?
Woohoo! Let's go! Welcome back, everybody, to another wonderful week discussing the amazing world of pop culture, movies, and TV. We are so happy to have you all back here with us. And, Slothro, would you like to fill them in what our topic of the week is?
Yes, so actually, it kind of relates to, or oh my gosh, I don't even know what word that was. It relates to a movie that just came out recently, which I'm sure a lot of people have gotten the chance to see, which came out at the very tail end of this last year, which was the Avatar movie, Fire and Ash. So today we're gonna kind of go for our overall thoughts on the whole trilogy, as I guess it's officially now a trilogy, and kind of what our thoughts will be with the next two movies that will come out. To where I don't, is there even a name for something that's more than like five movies? I don't think Star Wars has a name. It's just called a trilogy, right?
Yeah, I think after about three, I think it just becomes a franchise.
Okay, well, yep, the franchise, which is Avatar, the Blue People movies, not the Airbender.
Yes, although it is starting to feel like Avatar: The Last Airbender with all the elements that we're introducing here. But as per usual with our talks, major spoilers during this whole episode, including the most recent Avatar: Fire and Ash. So if you have not seen it, head to the theaters, give it a watch, or wait for it to come out on streaming and then come back and listen to this episode. But we are ready to start breaking down. This isn't really anything specific. We're not really going movie by movie. We're just giving our general thoughts on the franchise as a whole, what we like about it, what we don't, our thoughts and opinions. So you know the drill. Alrighty, so kicking us off, Slothro, what are some of your initial thoughts or ideas or even feelings that you have about Avatar?
So for me, I don't really ever remember too much of the story, which is something that I've heard a lot of people say, which is the story is feels kind of convoluted and there's nothing that really stands out about it, which is kind of what draws a lot of people in. But I think one of the biggest things that actually draw people into this series is not even really the story, it's the visuals. So the very first Avatar was very well known for pushing the boundaries when it came to CGI and visual effects when it first came out. And it almost became kind of not necessarily a blueprint, but it was like a pillar point of what could be achieved while doing visual effects or CGI for a movie. And so on that front alone, like what it's done for the visual effects industry is really cool. But in terms of like an actual story, if that's what you're wanting, I would not come to these movies expecting the story to be jaw-dropping or like it's definitely got its interesting moments, but if I would definitely say if you're going to watch these movies in general, definitely go with kind of looking for when I say eye candy, I mean like very pretty visuals, very high rendered scenes, characters, and it's very beautiful to look at.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So I watched the first Avatar movie only 2 or 3 years ago, and honestly, I was like, what is the big draw for this movie, this franchise in particular? And when I watched the second one, that made a lot more sense. The first one still looks really good, but the CGI was definitely a lot more impressive in Way of Water, in my opinion. And I agree with Slothro, it really has just become what can they do to push the boundaries with the CGI. But like Slothro also mentioned, the story is forgettable. So, I mean, I know the term for these kinds of big films is popcorn movies, but you know, popcorn at least has a kernel in the middle. I would say Avatar is more like Cheeto Puffs because the outside is delicious and cheesy, but then on the inside, it's really just flavored styrofoam nuggets, and there's not even really a kernel of substance. The story for me is just, it's not a good story. There's like nothing there to hold on to or to remember. Also, in that train of thought, if your story is not got a lot to it, these movies push 3 hours or are 3 hours every time, but they feel so much longer than 3 hours. And they also have this weird thing where the structure is super odd. Like they'll have an act one, act two, act three, and then I'm like, okay, we must be getting towards the end of the movie. But then they have another act two and act three after the first act one, act two, act three. And so it feels like the story structure is uneven and off kilter, and it feels like the pacing and just the overall structure of where we're going is just thrown off. And it has happened consistently in every single installment of this franchise.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. When it comes to a lot of the aspects of these movies, the definitely it's all visual, and if you're someone that can sit there for a long period of time and really enjoy looking at visual effects, It's very, very pretty to see, but yes, definitely it does drag on, especially if you're trying to focus more on the story and the characters as well. It's very much kind of, I don't know, it feels kind of two dimensional, kind of like what you said. I think Cheetor Puff is a great example. Like the characters necessarily, like you understand the archetypes they're going for, especially as they like go through each film, but it's definitely more of it doesn't do anything necessarily interesting with those kind of character dynamics. And it doesn't really leave you thinking about kind of what's going to happen next, because it almost kind of gives you the same vibe of when you're watching like a kids movie. That's kind of the kind of story beats in terms of like what you're kind of expecting will happen in the movie, at least from my perspective. And so it doesn't really leave a whole lot to be desired in terms of the story. But that's kind of my thoughts, at least overall, on all three.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the characters, um, more particularly, I felt this problem in the second and third movie. They go through basically the same character arc. And like you said, the characters don't really feel three dimensional. They just feel like archetypes. And because of that, they then start to make extremely predictable or weak decisions that don't really feel like they tie into like what's going on, or if they're only there to push the plot forward. And I felt like the storyline of The Way of Water and Fire and Ash are so similar. And I think the technological look advances aren't visibly high enough to differentiate the two films either. So they just kind of feel like the same beat for beat. And one thing I really was bothered by watching this franchise within, I would say, over the last 2 years or so, I've watched the entire franchise. I was really bothered how they handled Neytiri's character arc. I feel like in the first one, she's so spirited, she's assertive, she's really strong and independent. And then it feels kind of like they just nerfed her character in the following two movies. She just kind of gets lost in the jumble of all the characters and storylines, and the decisions that she makes just feel so different to what her character would actually do or how they introduced her character to us. And I think the most recent one, Avatar Fire and Ash, committed an egregious sin, which is that the characters make decisions that allow the villains to live, even when that doesn't logically make any sense in the situation. So, near the end of Fire and Ash, Neytiri would have killed that Ash Clan leader, but it felt like the plot of future movies needed the Ash Clan leader to survive so she doesn't get killed. And so it just feels like these characters, like you said, Slothro, that was a great way to put it. It feels like kid story beats, where instead of like depth to what is going on, it just feels like, oh, well, we know Neytiri is one that doesn't hesitate, but actually she's going to hesitate because we need this character to come back later. So, yeah, that was just something that really bothered me.
Yeah, I guess kind of going more into the in depth a little bit. I would say definitely for me watching The Way of the Water and Fire and Ash, kind of like what you said, it kind of exactly summarizes how I felt about them, especially the middle to end parts. They are so similar with the like they literally have almost like you could like lay them next to each other and they almost look exactly the same. There's a water battle going on. There's very big ships going against a large group of people. Clashing happens. The ship either sinks or, in the third movie, spoiler warning, it flies into the air. So I guess they just Uno reverse that for that part of the movie. And it's very similar to how like even the ending part happens with like the father of the human that is able to breathe in the third movie. He gets rescued like twice in a row, but on the third one it kind of flips a little bit, but it's still very similar. And so it just feels like you're rewatching the same movie, but it's in a different movie. And so it just kind of for me at least, it defeats the whole purpose of kind of what that story could do. And for me, I really enjoy like putting the story aside, like the character designs, like all of what they can do with this world is amazing. Like the potential is there; it's massive. I think the species, I forgot what they're called. The main characters, all of them look really cool. And the interactions with like the world and the creatures, I think, is all a really cool setup. I just think the story that is told with them could definitely use a lot more work. And I don't know if they'll be able to correct it in future films, but I guess that's it. Well, at least with this trilogy, it kind of has been tapering off a little bit, unfortunately.
Yeah, I concur. I hope they can right the ship, no pun intended, in regards to I don't know. I don't know what I'd call it. Maybe the degradation the degradation, you know what, the
De- degra-
deterioration of the characters.
Degradation.
Degradation, thank you. So I agree with you, Slothro. I really hope they can right the ship. And I agree. I think they look really cool. I think that the bioluminescent vibe that they give everything in the world of Avatar is really cool. I feel like also with like the character development and growth, then the parents in these movies, like especially the second and third is when the main characters are parents to their own kids. They constantly continue to ignore and distrust the kids. And then I feel like that just leads into a very stereotypical and overtrod rebellious response storyline that we get in a lot of other movies where the kids either fall into the trope of making stupid decisions or hey, because this kid did something we said not to do, it actually made everything work out. So it just feels like the story beats with every single character. Even though there's so many of them, they all just fall into stereotypical things that you've seen done in so many other movies. It also feels like they expect me to remember, like, so many things about the plethora of side characters in this movie, particularly when it comes to like the human military characters, but they don't really give me a reason to remember or care about them. And so, like Slothro said, it's just a repeat of there's a character that hunts whales in the second movie, and I was pretty sure he died at the end of that movie, and then he comes back in the third one. So I think they're just like, it just feels like they didn't know what to do going forward after the second one.
Yeah, it almost feels like they wanted to tell something in the second movie, but then they had like two branch offs. And then instead of like just sticking with one and then doing a whole new story for the third film, they're like, oh, maybe we can go back and try that other idea. Let's see what happens. And then you kind of end up with what happens in the third movie. For me, honestly, even with that rebellious archetype with the son, there's a lot of other movies that I can think of that aren't even like related. Like for example, like let's say the Croods, like the rebellious kind of arc is done 10 times better in a movie like The Croods than it is in this movie. And I know this is kind of like a little nitpick, but the language that, at least in the second or third movie, like there's no cussing at all, which I understand this is a movie that tries to appeal to all audiences, but I feel like calling each other, like I think they call each other butthead in some scenes, and they just use a lot of terms that I'm like, I don't, at least with what they're doing, I feel like either the Neytiri would have their own kind of cuss word language, or they would use like at least semi crude language. And I'm not saying it needs it, but it's kind of what you would expect, especially from like this whole situation going on. And there's just a lot of little nooks and crannies to the story that leave you kind of scratching your head of why it's happening that specific way at all.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that the language that they use or like they write for like the younger characters, the kid and teen characters, it kind of feels like language of like how to do fellow kids, you know? Like it feels like an adult wrote language based on like what they think teenagers talk like, but it doesn't feel like that is like I agree with you, Slothro. Like if this is like an alien race, like they don't really they seem to have like beat for beat like all of our nuances that we have in like human language, but there isn't like in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, then he wrote his own language for like the elves for the elven characters and for the orc characters, and for like it just created a deeper world and felt like each of the species in Lord of the Rings were so unique, and I just kind of wish they did that a little bit more with the Na'vi. So I agree, Slothro. I think that's a really good point, and I'm really just worried that these movies will be a series where it's the same tired plot points of the humans go to take over Pandora, and then they get to this big final battle, and then they lose the battle to Na'vi, and then we just repeat the cycle over and over again. And so I just really hope that that they can figure out some way to make it feel a little more interesting. And I really thought they would have done that with the Ash clan or tribe by the volcano, but then they just kind of took a sideline and didn't really impact the story all that much except for during the battle scenes.
They basically completely left that whole story plot like
Yes!
halfway through. They just kind of forego that. They're like, oh, I guess we're gonna do this now.
Thank you. I'm so glad I'm not the only one that was like, okay, we just kind of forgot about them for a while, I guess.
And I think what they were trying to do when it comes to changing the story up is having humans be able to breathe on this planet, which is an interesting idea. But I feel like all it's going to do is humanity, quote unquote, is going to figure out how to do it. And then it's just going to be like what you said, the exact, like, how is it going to make this any different? Like, I don't feel like the humans are really making that big of an impact here. So I don't know, especially thinking of other media in like video games or movies where like there's like large scale stuff going on. I feel like it's not going anywhere, and I don't know why humanity keeps trying to take over this specific place instead of just going somewhere else. So I don't know. There's just a lot of beats that I'm don't know where the story's going to go in the fourth and fifth one, but I definitely don't think that I don't think it'll be as strong, at least, as the second one. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've heard the joke that there's the curse of the middle film in a trilogy, but ironically, the second one was easily the best one. So, I mean, if they peaked at the second and there's five, that's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree. It's just I don't know where the story can go with this. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of visuals they come up with because they're always really cool to look at. But I don't know story beat wise where they can possibly go with it. There are some interesting aspects, like in the first movie. I really thought that becoming an avatar through like connecting your mind to it was really cool. That's a really cool concept. But in the second movie, they kind of focus more on like what the Natiri can do, which kind of helps kind of carry that over. And then the third one doesn't really even do that. Like if it does that, it does that for the one character that has the abilities to interact with the nature almost. I forgot what her name was, but they kind of do it with that, but it's becomes like one character's plot point. And so there's all this really cool stuff that they can use, and I feel like they're just kind of surface sweeping with it and not like picking one avenue and choosing it. And then if they want to do something different, like do movies like way in the future about like different avenues or something.
Yeah, I agree. I think the coolest part of the franchise initially was the becoming the Avatar. Well, not like the Last Airbender, but it kind of is that concept of like becoming somebody else or something else to connect with people or connect with nature in a different way. Yeah, I hope that they could bring that back a little, or any of that kind of uniqueness to the story would be really nice. And I have kind of maybe a dumb question. So let me know in the comments your thoughts. Maybe my feelings about the Avatar movies are unfounded. Maybe a lot of people love them more than I do. So I'm sure people will let me know their thoughts. But the motive of the Ash Tribe leader doesn't really make any sense to me. If they steal all the resources they need, but then also want to burn everything to the ground, I'm not really understanding where they're going to get more resources to keep from starving. So that whole thing just, it was such like a nagging plot hole in my mind where I'm like, the plot point of this doesn't even make sense. It's like she wants to burn everything to the ground, and is that the implication that she will then obtain ultimate power over everybody else? I'm just, yeah, her motive was just a little confusing to me.
It's basically the Scar mindset from The Lion King. Basically, is he wanted all the resources to take over everything, but then I don't think she fully thought ahead of okay, well if everything's gone, then what is there left to? But it's like a lot of stuff like that happens, and so it's kind of like you understand like that avenue, but at the same time it's like why does she like she doesn't really give you a whole lot of like in-depth reasons like that she explains why she wants to move towards that avenue to begin with. Like there's no interesting like twists of like what led her to even get to that point. Instead you get the commander guy snuffing a bunch of powder and then flirting with the tribe lady, and then it kind of just brushes past that, and then she just kind of becomes his sidekick. So it had like some very interesting stuff that they could have done with it, make her like an actual like threat. Like what if she decided to fight against the other clans of the Natiri and the humanity because she deemed them both as threats? I thought that could have been a really cool avenue they could have taken with that, to where now there's like three factions kind of going on, and the tribal Ash tribal people are like massive. Like there's tons of them from like fallen clans. That would have been a really cool idea, similar to I guess like Lord of the Rings or other ones where there's like other creatures that can do battle and stuff on a different planet. Like making it to where it's not just the Natiri and all the other regular wildlife. There's got to be something else on that big of a planet going on, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Slothra, you and I think very similarly. I was wondering if the Ash clan would turn against the humans in addition to all the other clans. But then that was a great term you use, sidekick. Like, they totally take a back seat. And she's such a cool character and such a good foil for Neytiri that I just was shocked that they just didn't do anything. It just feels like the female characters have just been nerfed out of this story and kind of just take a back seat. Although I will say, I know I sound like I'm hating on Avatar Fire and Ash a lot, but I think my favorite part, I thought they did a really good job with the baby, the little tiny blue CGI baby at the end. I think a lot of times CGI babies can look a little weird, but I actually thought they did a really great job, and it actually looked cute, even though it was CGI. So I have to give them props on that, because I was actually like, okay, at least the baby's really cute.
Yeah, the visuals always are really cool, and I don't want to sound like I'm nagging on the series as a whole. There's just so much potential that you could do with this, and with the visuals that they have, it's almost like a Marvel, like, Infinity War to Endgame kind of scenario that could have happened with it, and it would be like be able to stand on its own two legs with its whole franchise, and it would be really really cool to see. But unfortunately, I don't think that's fully where this is going, which is unfortunate. But even with that, I'm still looking forward to seeing how they end this. Will it be as satisfying as it could have been? Probably not. But are we still going to get some pretty cool, I guess, visual nuggets to look at? I would definitely say yeah. I think we will in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I think the best part will just be, I don't know if I need 3 hours of it, but I think the best part will be the visuals. And I agree. I think the ending won't be that satisfying. I feel like they're really overstaying their welcome with the general character. I feel like he seems to be like conflicted, but then he's not. And so he just feels like he's sitting on the fence and they're trying to kind of make him an anti hero, but also not. I just feel like it's just wasted potential that, if they can correct it in the fourth one, I think I would take back what I said, but I definitely think that the second one is going to be the peak. I think the story's the tightest. I think the visuals look the best. But that was just some feelings that I had. Also, one last thought. The Navi ride on those beasts. I believe they're the Ikron or Ikron. Sorry, mispronouncing that, I know. I for sure am. But they get the shortest end of the stick. So many of them die in these movies. I'm realizing, having watched these so close together. Especially the latest movie, they just, oh man, so many of them die. I feel so bad for them. But hopefully they make those little cute flying beasts less cannon fodder in the next movie and instead beef up their characters a little more.
Nature takes a major blow in all of these. Like, there's so much nature getting burned, blown up, destroyed. It's very unfortunate, especially on the creature's end. And I will say, though, these movies, if anything, do spark some really good memes, though. I will definitely say that.
I agree. That's always the best part, isn't it? Despite any critical thinking thoughts we have about movies or TV, I always can find a good meme. Alrighty, well, I think that was most of my thoughts. I am holding out hope, as always. I'm willing to go in with an open mind on movie 4 and 5, see if we can have the airbender show up, and then we have the four elements with all of the avatars. But anyway, yes, Avatar is a fine enough series. It looks really pretty. I just would like to see more from the story. But what are your closing thoughts, Slothro?
I definitely say if you enjoy watching something for its visuals, you will definitely love this series. If you're coming here for a story, you won't be fully satisfied, but maybe if you're just looking for some kind of dumb fun, or just kind of like just turn your brain off, then these movies are fine. They're very serviceable. Unless you don't want to sit through, I guess now would be, if you watched them from beginning to end, it'd probably be 9 hours worth of movie right there, which is a lot. That's a lot of visual stuff going on. So if you're wanting that, definitely give it a watch. I'd highly recommend it. But other than that, just whatever you feel like you want to do. But thank you guys so much for listening to us ramble about it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And it was great to talk about Avatar with Slothro. It's always a pleasure. And we really do appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to listen to us talk about pop culture, movies, and TV. But let us know, what are your thoughts on the Avatar series in the comments? Did you like the most recent installment? But you can find me, Postmortem Nightshade, at Postmortem Nightshade on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I do mostly movie review content, and I'm starting to sprinkle in a few memes here and there. And Slothro, where can they find you?
You guys can find me over on YouTube. So I'll see you guys over there.
Yes, and check out Slothro's, I'm gonna give a shameless plug, has been doing these amazing episode runs on Slime Rancher 2. So if you're into cozy games, Slothro it's very relaxing to watch him play those games. So head on over, check them out. They're great. But we really appreciate you joining us again. Let us know in the comments your thoughts. If there's anything you want to hear us talk about, also let us know that. We love to hear from you all. But it was a pleasure joining you all today, and we will see you all next week. Bye!
Bye!